My name is Craig Collier, and I'm the Vice President of Data Solutions here at Greenleaf Consulting. I've been with Greenleaf Consulting for approximately a year now. Prior to joining Greenleaf, I was working for Snowflake for 6.5 years, where I served in the capacity of sales engineer, partner sales engineer, sales enablement lead. I've done a lot of different types of roles at Snowflake, and it was an opportunity for me to get to learn about a lot of partners and a lot of folks who are in the modern data stack and the modern data era. One particular company that I was really interested in when I first joined Snowflake was Sigma Computing. Sigma Computing is an advanced analytics tool. It allows you to, in an Excel-like spreadsheet view, to really allow business users and technical users kind of co-collaborate and build business value and technology solutions. And today I have Dylan Morrison, who's joining me. Dylan Morrison is the product lead at Sigma Computing. How you doing today, Dylan?
Doing all right. Thanks, Craig. How about yourself?
Awesome. I was really itching to get an opportunity to kind of speak to you specifically on the heels of your latest release around data models within Sigma. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but I was interested in getting the audience to learn something about Dylan. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Dylan, and how you got into the data space.
Yeah, totally. Happy to. So let's see. Started my career doing some finance and consulting work, and in those, when I was working in consulting, I was constantly more of the quantitative guy on the deal teams I was working on. And at first that was a lot of time spent in Excel, but as time went on, working with larger data sets, started to get more into the business intelligence type of tool sets. So started working with things like Tableau and databases directly, and that just got me really interested and exciting about the broader data space in general. So after that, went and joined a data-oriented company called Looker. It's a business intelligence tool. Was there for about 6-7 years or so. And then more recently have joined Sigma Computing to lead up their BI team for the last about 2 years.
That is awesome. Yeah, we got a lot of friends that have crossed paths from Looker. I mean, obviously, Looker was one of Snowflake's very first partners. It might have been the number one partner, to be honest with you. But so it was interesting. I'm surprised that we didn't cross paths back then. But I mean, look, it's good that we got a chance to kind of meet each other now.
Yeah, small world. I'm glad. Yeah, glad we're getting the time now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I kind of wanted to kick things off to kind of get an understanding around, I really wanted to talk to you a little bit about data models, right? And, data modeling in the past, when we think about, building data warehouses on things like row store databases. I mean, look, I started my career way back at SQL Server 7. I know I'm dating myself, right? We were building analytical databases on SQL Server, which at the time, it was fine for the smaller data volumes that we were dealing with. But then as data volume started to explode and it was more different types of data, different formats of data, different speeds in which data were coming in, it was kind of impossible to really kind of maintain that environment. So if you think about it, we really started building architectures to kind of handle that type of data and the type of analytics that we were building in row store databases, because that's all we had available to us at the time. So the question that I've always had, or what that I've had recently in my mind, is that, are traditional analytical data models still necessary with modern tooling? And I'm interested in your point of view on that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think somewhat implied in that question is that, modern data tooling, particularly databases, warehouses, various query engines, have just gotten so fast and performant that maybe you don't need to worry about modeling your data as much, because the query engine can just handle all that complexity for you and still do it really fast. You can still get maybe like sub-second query results and things like that. And I guess short answer is yes, analytical models still very much needed. I wish that weren't the case. I wish everything was fast and quick enough that it just works sort of instantaneously anywhere. But these newer sort of warehouses, especially like your columnar warehouses, work a lot differently than row-based relational data models. And the types of schemas they work with are just, quite different than relational data models. So they work on better, much larger tables, wider tables that have many more rows of data in there. And so when you're thinking about the data model that you build to power your application, probably much more transaction based. When you want to start doing more serious or complex or heavy analytics on that data, you typically do want to rebuild the schema that you're working with to be a little bit more denormalized, a little bit more just structured for columnar querying. So
Mhm.
it's still definitely necessary to do some of that optimization. It's going to help with speed. It's also going to help with cost. The less joins you're doing across lots of different sort of dimension or entity tables, the quicker and cheaper it's going to be. So yeah, still very much necessary.
Yeah, that's interesting because I got to thinking because like some of the tooling, specifically BI tools, some of it requires a well-defined star schema, right? Which is, if you think about it, managing surrogate keys, it gets a little challenging sometimes. Some people want to skirt that specific process and create like a big fact table, right? I mean, that's how some tools work. I mean, Looker, when you were there, it didn't mind a big fat wide fact table, totally denormalized. It's easy, to really kind of get in there, specifically with columnar oriented databases. That's the format that we're looking at. Do you see, a necessity to continue to use these well-defined star schemas, or is it the old adage, the IT, it depends? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, fair. So I mean, with most of these things, the answer is usually going to be it depends to some capacity. But I think there's sort of two ways to look at this, right? Like you can build schemas or data models that are really optimized for analytics and for cost. And you can also build data models that are really more oriented for end user consumption. So it's really what you care about as a business. If you're looking at the same dashboard every single day and those are static elements or tiles on that dashboard, they're issuing the same queries each time, then sure, like maybe you want to use a schema that's more optimized for analytics. But if you're building something for self-service of end users, where it's really easy for end users to come in and access a highly curated table that is really easy for them to understand, then that schema might look different. And then that's where we can kind of also get into the conversation about like what is a just physical data model, how your schema is built versus what is a more like semantic type of data model, which is really
Yes.
meant to help curate things for end user consumption. So
Mhm.
you can actually kind of do both of those things in different places. But it really just depends on your skill set, your tool set, and what's best for your organization. I think a lot of times when we talk about data tools in general, be it schema design or what tools are being used or anything like that, sometimes I feel like, especially in the data community, we can sort of over rotate on like what is just the optimal, perfect architecture for
Right.
any type of query or workload or whatever the case is. But I always like to stay really oriented in like what is the business value that we're trying to deliver with all of this. Like the whole purpose of an analytics org is really to service the rest of the organization and help everyone else become more data driven and
Mhm.
use data to make better decisions. And so a lot of times that means really curating your data to make it easy for end users, for your line workers to access and get value out of. And that type of model or schema might look a lot different than what you would build if you were just trying to make the fastest queries possible.
Yeah, yeah, indeed, indeed. It's interesting that you mentioned semantic models, right? I mean, typically we talked about cubes, right? I mean, like back in the day. I mean, look, I built my early career on building SSAS models. I mean,
Yep.
and MDX has always been a little bit of a challenge for our SQL guys. You know what I mean? It's a different way of kind of thinking about things, and I'm so glad that the new tooling has kind of rotated towards pure SQL, which is the lingua franca of data. You know what I'm saying? Do you have an opinion on that?
No, I completely agree. Thank goodness. I mean, there was the wave of all the cube technologies and a lot of proprietary languages there. You got into the world of big data Hadoop a bit later, and a lot of people were having to write all sorts of new languages and very different paradigms. I'm very happy, especially that when I really got involved in the data world, everyone was pretty standardized on SQL, and all the new tools that are coming out seem to all everyone seems to have very much agreed that that is going to continue to be the lingua franca of analytics into
Exactly.
the future. So I'm certainly very happy about that, and I think it just makes the whole ecosystem better for everyone.
Indeed, it's really helped your partner Snowflake really kind of corner the market. The next thing I wanted to ask you is, what do you see are some of the challenges in maintaining and evolving data models, specifically for end user consumption? I'm not talking about ingest, I'm talking about end user consumption. Which thoughts on that?
Yeah, totally. It's a great point. And so since we're talking about end user consumption, I'm going to angle this from more of like the semantic modeling standpoint. So how are you modifying your semantic objects to expose them to end users in a way that's easiest for them to understand and consume? And I think that, something that's more challenging probably today than it was in the past, especially when you were working with cubes, is that business logic and just in general, business processes around companies are a lot more flexible and agile today than they used to be in the past. What this means from a data side is that your schema is changing a lot more than it probably used to ever in the past.
Indeed.
It's for all sorts of reasons, like you are changing business processes and business logic. You're redefining what your sales segments are. Maybe you have previously had commercial and enterprise, and now you're introducing mid-market, or excuse me, a small, medium business or venture-backed tech segments or something like that. So business logic changes. Maybe you have redoing some sales processes. You add some new objects in Salesforce. Your Salesforce schema is now going to change. There's just all sorts of ways that businesses are changing nowadays that end up sort of trickling down to how the data is represented in your warehouse. So
Indeed,
schema
indeed.
changes happen a lot.
And think about data types. Data types themselves. There's a lot more JSON data running around. It's meant to be flexible, right?
Yeah.
You could get a lot more value out of kind of leaving some of the fields alone. And then when you need them, once you understand them a little bit better, bring them in. It makes it a lot easier because the scheme is so flexible.
Perfect example. Yeah. Big JSON objects. You decide you want to take one of those objects out and make it a hard column on a table.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things just happen all the time. So that means that your semantic model, how you're representing that data to your end users, needs to update and change with that as well. And in the past, I think a lot of tools were much more heavy-handed in how they built out their semantic models, particularly BI tools that had semantic models. And it was a big lift to go and change any of that logic to reflect the changes that happened at the schema level or just the business logic.
Yeah.
And I think what's really required nowadays is just much more lightweight modeling tools that allow you to iterate and respond to these quick changes across the business much faster and much easier. Mm-hmm. So if, say, you want to update the logic behind a key KPI to incorporate a new column that was added in your database, you want a modeling layer where it's really quick and easy to iterate on those metrics and then push them out to everywhere that's using those metrics. What's also important in that is you now need much more visibility than you probably had in the past, right? So if you're building a semantic model, you need to understand with each of those tables in that model, where are they being used downstream and what dashboards are they being used and what workbooks are they being used? If you make a change to your schema, you want better visibility and kind of proactive understanding about what are all the downstream assets that are going to break because of this change.
Yeah,
so,
indeed.
In addition to having a lightweight tool that can help you make those changes quick, you also want something that's giving you visibility to understand where things are going to break and also give you a place to centrally fix those breakages. So, we'll use the data type example there. If a data type is changed, you want to first update that data type in your semantic model. You also want to know in every downstream workbook or dashboard that's using this column, was that field previously a number and it was used in lots of bar charts, and I don't know, now it's a text, or that's a pretty bad example, but if that's going to break some sort of element or some tile or some notebook downstream or something like that, you want to know in advance, and you want to have a central place where you can make that change and push it down to all of those downstream assets, knowing that those assets won't break because of that change you just pushed.
Yeah,
so
indeed.
Pretty wordy, but I hope that makes sense.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. Typically we see a lot of that happening for, data quality routines that may happen on ingest or, things of that nature. But it's good to have both angles. You can catch it from the front end user tool perspective, as well as catching it, in your data quality routines if you're, when you're transforming your data. Next question I had for you was, how do you envision semantic models kind of coexisting within modern data architecture today?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for one, I think semantic models are more important now than probably ever. Uh, Organizations are dealing with more and more data than ever before. They also have more and more users trying to access that data than ever before. It's not just data analysts. You really want your sort of line of business owners to be able to get in and self-serve with their data, ask and answer their own questions, share insights out with the rest of their team, set up alerts, really integrate data into their core workflows.
Yeah.
So because of that, a semantic model is really meant to serve as a human readable representation of your business data. So the fact that you have more data coming in and more people that are trying to access that data means that a semantic model that can help bridge the gap between the real technical data representation of data in a warehouse versus how that data should be surfaced to end users in a way that they can really easily understand in human readable terms. Not all of the underscores and weird column names that come with your warehouse. That's really more important than ever nowadays. And I think there's also several different sort of macro trends that are driving more and more value towards the where your semantic logic really lives. So I think if you talk to some customers sort of at the bleeding edge here, which we at Sigma do all the time, you'll find that a lot of customers are really wanting to put more and more of their data in open table formats. So things like Iceberg, getting very popular right now. And they want the ability to just keep their data in one place and be able to sort of mix and match the different query or processing engines that are pointing at that data, depending on the workload that they're doing. So, really common example here. A lot of folks might want to use Snowflake for more common warehouse workloads. And a lot of folks might want to use Databricks for more ML or data science type workloads. And they don't want to have to move data back and forth between different storage places to do those different workloads. They want to keep them in one place and be able to point both engines at it.
Yeah.
And in that sort of world, where does, where you have two different engines, or even more than that in a lot of cases, where does semantic logic live?
Right.
Where is your business logic? You don't want to have it duplicated, and you have to build it in both of these different tools or in two different layers. Or if you do that, you really want those tools to be able to speak to each other, and you want those semantic layers to be really interoperable with each other. But just because of the dynamic of more and more companies using lots of different sort of query engines, more and more value will accrue to where the business logic powering a lot of the definitions those query engines are trying to pull from. More and more value will accrue to where those definitions live.
Yeah. And business users kind of know their data best. If you think about it, I mean, the time it takes for, we IT folks to try to figure out exactly, what code one means and all that other good stuff. I mean, it's better when you get a subject matter expert in it. I actually have a different take on that as well, is that, if you really want to drive a project home, get the business involved, right? The business owns it. The business will fund it, right? I mean, that's the key thing. So in order to drive business value, you got to get them involved early, give them a place that they can kind of coexist with IT, make it their make it their idea, and then it's success, right? How do you say 1, 2, 3 profit? That's how you get there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the sooner and the more involved you can ever get your business counterparts involved in any of these processes, especially even from like the beginning and architecting out what your entire stack's going to look like. If you can have your business goals and the end goals in mind up front, everything's just going to go so much smoother.
Yeah, indeed. So my next question for you, and I think this is one that you'll be able to just drive this one home, because, how does Sigma help business and data teams collaborate more effectively to deliver business value? The key word there is business value. We've been talking about this, so bring it home for me here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll first answer that in relation to the semantic layer, since that's sort of what we were just talking about a second ago. And I think you made a really good point there about how usually it's business owners who know their business processes the best. They know how to define their metrics the best. I think that's a really, really important key insight. And it's frankly one of the reasons that BI has existed for a long time and always felt like it has never really perfectly solved all of our problems, is because business owners, people doing the operations every day, those are people that do know the business best. They know the logic behind their calculations the best. An example I like to give is our VP of operations here. Her name's Orla. She's amazing. She understands our revenue logic better than anyone, way better than our internal data team here. So when we need to update our ARR or NDR metric or something like that, because we changed our Salesforce schema or whatever the case might be, Orla is going to know how to do that better than anyone in the company. And she should really be empowered to do that. And so that's the way that we've really approached building out a semantic model within Sigma. We really wanted to lean into a few core sort of fundamental principles that we think are going to make our semantic model really powerful and effective. And the first is really leaning into a business user empowerment. So our entire semantic model is GUI based. It's just, you can visual drag and drop. You can define metrics using our Excel style syntax. So anyone that speaks Excel can come in and create metrics in Sigma, assuming they have all the right permissions. But I think that's really important because a lot of other tools have sort of require you to learn a new language. You were mentioning MDX earlier. There's a lot of tools that require you to learn an entire new language in order to create a metric, in order to define one. And it has to be done in code, for example. And that's obviously prohibitively difficult for most line of business folks who don't know how to code. And frankly, they shouldn't need to learn how to code. So with Sigma, we've really leaned into the ability for our end users to be able to create metrics and even define joins between tables if they would like to do that. Because again, they're the ones that know their business the best. They're the ones that know their metrics the best. There's no reason that Orla should need to go through our central data team to update our revenue metric when she's the one who knows it best. She owns it. So really believe in empowering the end users to build the assets that are most important for them in the form of metrics.
Yeah, and it's also a faster time to value if you think about that, right? If the business user writes the rule is available. It might take 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month, depending on your backlog, to get the IT team to actually get that metric in, right?
That's exactly right. And we're all familiar with that pain. We've all dealt with it in the past. I was mentioning like why BI has never really solved the fundamental sort of problems of making every company data driven right now. And it really comes back to what you were just saying there. That data teams are usually the ones that know and own the tools and can work with them. Business users are the one that know the logic. How do we get these two people to work together in a really collaborative and seamless way? And so I think that's something that we're doing actually a really good job of here at Sigma. So I mentioned the semantic models and the ability for business users to sort of create their metrics. There's a lot of other ways that we try to drive collaboration in the product as well. So one thing that we like to talk about internally here at Sigma is that we believe the future of analytics is, quote unquote, multimodal. So, it's like a big $5 word here, but what I mean by that is your analytics tool should be meeting your users where they are. They shouldn't have to learn new complex languages to start to work, to be able to work with your data. And so that's what we're doing with Sigma. Since Sigma's inception, we were founded on the premise of trying to make analytics more accessible to everyday users. And the best way to do that initially was to create an Excel style interface for people to do analytics on data directly in your warehouse.
It was huge. It was huge.
Which has been super helpful. And I think that billions of people out there can use spreadsheets. That means, we're now making analytics accessible to those billions of people. We also have SQL. You can just write SQL directly in Sigma for your analysts that still really like to use SQL. So you can speak Excel, you can speak SQL. We are introducing right now Python into the app, so you can write Python directly on the same dashboard as any of these other elements. And then we're also introducing our natural language interface with AI. So you can just ask questions in natural language and get visualizations and tables to help answer those questions. And all four of these kinds of elements can coexist on the exact same dashboard. You have one person that built an element with AI, one person that did it with a spreadsheet, another with SQL, another with Python. And all of these different elements can just reference each other really easily and build off of each other. So in this way, we're really helping break down the traditional silos that come with different skill sets. Rather than having your data analyst in SQL, your business analyst in Excel, your data scientist in a notebook, and AI is brand new. But rather than having all these folks live and work in different tools, they can all work together on sort of the same canvas. And that really brings a level of collaboration to analytics that has just never been possible before.
Yeah. One thing that I've come to love about Sigma, I've been playing around with it a lot lately, is the ability for you to shred JSON directly in the interface. I think that's remarkable. I mean, now listen, I come from a Snowflake background, so I was super passionate when they introduced being able to query JSON data kind of like instantly. That to me was groundbreaking, right? If you think about it, I mean, there were a lot of telemetry that used to pass through. I mean, I used to work in call centers, for years.
Yeah.
And you just couldn't get to that data. You just said, I'm going to leave it there, right? And I always just like to say that certain data points get left on the cutting room floor, right? Because of the veracity of it, right? And now, it just was a point and click right in the interface, which is huge.
Yeah, and it's so real. I mean, what you're describing right now, I think is so important. Which is that, you probably could have figured out how to parse through all that JSON if you wanted to, but it's just a really difficult. It's a complex ask. It's cumbersome. It takes a lot of time. And so a lot of times you're just not going to do it. You're like, I'm not going to spend the few hours kludging that thing together, because I want those answers, but not enough to invest that much time. And I think that's something that Sigma, we've done a really good job of trying to just make all of those sort of difficult daily tasks a lot easier. And in doing that, we remove a lot of friction. It makes it really easy. There's a lot less of those situations where you're like, hey, I want to look up something, but I know it's going to be kind of a pain in the butt to do all the calculations there and all the transformations. I'm just not going to do it. But things like really easy native JSON extracts with just a few point and clicks, as you were mentioning. Things like we have a concept called lookup in Sigma, which is basically very similar to Excel doing writing a VLOOKUP between two tables. Exact same syntax as a VLOOKUP, but underneath the hood, we're actually doing a join there. But that's something that a business user isn't going to want to learn how to do joins or think about that kind of stuff, but they do know VLOOKUPs, and so we can make that super easy for them. We have things like a little wizard that can help you do some complex period over period analysis and get that formatted and output in a nice table for you. So anything we can do to help accelerate the more complex or multi-step kind of tasks, we're really working on doing that in just some native UI. So it's open and quick for anyone.
Yeah. And then, to take it a step further, the ability for Sigma to be embedded in any tool. I mean, like we around here, we use next.js a lot. I mean, typically, we use different types of tooling, some Streamlit, to be able to embed Sigma into those types of formats, I think or tools is kind of awesome too.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Similar to a lot of other stuff in the product, our embedding functionality is really oriented around being as quick and easy as possible to set up, but then also really deeply customizable for any deep configurations you want to make.
Yeah, and secure, of course.
And secure.
Absolutely. I mean, that's probably just table stakes that we're talking about here. Everything has to be secure.
Yeah.
But, I'm gonna tell you, Dylan, this has been a good conversation, man. I mean, I was hoping it would be. You're super knowledgeable about your space, and I'm interested in just watching you as you go along and watching the product. We're gonna let the folks who are here viewing this will, be watching your product, and I'm super excited for what you are going to do in the future.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, really appreciate it. Awesome chatting with you as well. And I get surprised our paths hadn't crossed before this, but really happy to be chatting with you and know you now.
Absolutely. So, how can folks get in touch with you if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can just go to Sigma Computing. You can get in touch with, anyone on our team if you want to learn more about the product. If you have questions for me specifically, you can just find me, Dylan at sigmacomputing.com. Happy to respond to any emails or questions there as well.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Dylan. So we're going to let Dylan go right now. See you later.
Thanks so much, Greg. Appreciate it.
Yes. And if you want to get in touch with Greenleaf and learn more about what our solutions have to offer, we've been in the data and analytics space, custom software development, as well as fractional technology leader space for quite, 10 better part of 10 years now. And we'd love to really work with you, right? So look out for us. You can find us at Greenleaf, GREENLEAF group, grp.com. Join us again for Live with Greenleaf and TechWise. Thank you.